Now, so to speak very quickly on Roger and his admiration for using art for Rorschaching, uh, it, it's one reason I've wanted communications between him and I severed, and one reason he agreed not to pursue me to my property, survey, survey me at my property, and then tell me about it. Um, he does all this and then goes like, "Oh, I think you're scheming on going after my cash. Um, when you want to leave." And the guy is totally predatorial. It's fucking retarded. Like you want effectively a restraining order on him, and for him to not. He doesn't settle workplace problems. He doesn't settle disputes or contentions that you might have with mistreatment in the workplace. And then he wonders things like if you're scheming on his money, and of course he will Rorschach. Of course you can see why he would want to Rorschach art and artists, because they're obviously they're more appealing aesthetically than his face that looks like dog food getting caught in the act of raping pizzas. So why? I've challenged this idea in psychology. Why are you using these two characters as models unless they're both prettier than the doctor? And why is the test valid unless you're trying to navigate sex appeal to marshal a negotiation for administering a medicine without contest, with minimal contest, because you've tried to study who's to whose sex appeal. So so Roger would do all of this because I doubt it wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised unless she's heavily purchased that his own wife would be to his sex appeal. You watch them dance and there's like little cooperation really in their dance ability. Roger's mind is more on the kneeling for a knighthood, and you see his step towards his wife involving this, like he's in a Roman toga and he's cramming that knee down as if his wife were holding a sword to give him a knighthood. And you're a fucking idiot. Like you're a fucking idiot. And why? So yes, be banned from people's properties at when you admit to such yourself. Don't you dare pursue them and accuse them of scheming on your money. What they know about all of that has been from you, and you're fucking talking out of rank, because you don't. Why tell a retailer the sort of things you would tell them? You're talking out of out of turn. Actually, it's also why I would imagine if there's ever a conflict scenario, Roger and Gary will have a routine. Now it's based around an elaboration of the Luciferian Darwinian conflict, and it's aimed at calling their competitors poofs by implication. But it'll be one where Roger insists, Gary insists, I've had so many differences with Roger over this, we've argued about this, and he'll represent you.
That they would have this whole
you can take these two facts to them and go, well, you've defined a homosexual as a person whose responsibility comes from the rebellion against their own sexuality. Now you must either show why and how you've measured that conclusion through the application of scientific methods, or you have to admit that it's a non-scientific it's a non-scientific opinion.
dividing up and pretending.
And as soon as you admit it's a non-scientific opinion, it's got to have come from somewhere.
Doubling their
And since you think it's of the morally good that you teach these ideas or impose them on your staff,
subjects,
and since you
and
concede
whatnot,
that all your morals and ethics
they'll
come
also
from your
hopefully
religion,
create and
you've
peddle off the
admitted
facade.
vis-a-vis that it's indeed a moral, it's a
And it makes
religiously
sense to me
pronounced
that,
judgment.
Gary going.
So
'Cause
so you're
Gary's
in
got the
you're in a
deeper voice,
state of
Roger's tone
going,
voice
well,
just makes people
we're extremely
stop at one
Gary and
some level
Roger,
and go,
we're
like,
extremely
so
hypocritical
you and
because
puberty was
we're defining people who aren't allowed
still
to
at odds
enter
with
our
the
religion
process. Right.
by standards
But,
that come from our religion and can
So
come
Roger
from
looks
nowhere else than our
candidate
religion.
pet, but,
So what are we doing? Are we abducting them into our religion while denying them entry into our religion? And so because of this, they're at tremendous
And
odds
where he might root Gary
with
would be
themselves
in the whole
in a bunch of ways, and it's created a lot of blind spots. Like, you know,
dental gaps.
seeing Gary Can
Which
sing
also,
"Hey
which is also
Jude,"
why they like to
painted
pick on
up like the guy
their
with the
own
star on his eye from Kiss,
kids.
and singing "Hey Jude" to his wife
Big
Judy.
fans of these
It's like, yeah, has the actor Jude Law shown you his vagina and breast
baby foreskin?
as yet, Gary?
So rub some of that in between your front teeth. Gary Can.
So, what's extraordinarily representative of
You're a fucking disgrace, man.
them being in favor of the practice of abduction
disgrace.
is things like making a religiously based judgment when you belong to a secluded, reclusive, and hidden religion. For which you'll use this religion to judge people, but you won't allow them entrance into your religion. You've therefore got them to some extent abducted by the judgments pronounced by your religion. So your next move is to masquerade that these judgments don't come from religion whatsoever, but are known as facts in medical science. And you then do that, and then wait to see if you're intercepted by an issue is taken with you by a surveillance radar. And then once you've done that, you've used dishonesty in an issue to track surveillance tracking you, and that's of benefit to your studies concealment as well. So the thing about this dividing out and one routine where Roger will be like, well, Gary and I practically hate each other now. Like, Gary gives me so much sand in my vagina, says Roger, and vice versa. They've both put so much sand in each other's vagina. It looks like they'll never come good again. This could be a divisional wedge that has divided the hearts of two good men that have a 40-year-old chemist chain. Whereas you need to understand that, this routine will be mapped out by their jollies religiously come off the fact that if you study the biblical texts, Lucifer wins on many fronts. He's more cunning, he's more moral, and he doesn't directly kill. He orchestrates God to kill for him. He orchestrates that God kills all of the children of Job in the book of Job. So while Lucifer put the idea to him, it was God who did the killing. So artists have more intellectual integrity, they have more poise and natural beauty. And there's what I keep in mind at all times is that, Gary's remarks on the conference is that the annual staff conference is that it's the one event a year where the masks all come off for the Capital Chemist staff. That's what he would say. This is the one place, the one event where all the masks come off. So meanwhile, Roger's hosting games of how to host a murder there. And now his agenda is to say that art in principle, particularly art on video or the TV, is the cause of mental illness. Is to imply that either hosting his own games of how to host a murder was a artistic fiction on Roger's own mind, but in which case you would then expect it to be something he would oppose on ethical grounds. He would be into prohibiting the view that you blame someone on art. You know, in fact, you've got that he's put on a mask, as admitted by his own business partner. You've got that at the staff conference, he's wearing a bit of a mask, and then at the staff conference the mask has come off, and then back at work he's wearing the mask. So whereas you would think if he were doing moral dealings such as honest profiling, if he were making honestly valid and legitimate profiles that were incorporating of fair and balanced judgments, why go now? It's time for the annual conference. Let's take our masks off, dance to a whole bunch of music, and play games of how to host a murder. Where does now that he's made profiles that are indicting art in principle, and wears his mask on in his public business life? How does he where's his how is his mask on while he's doing business? Because he can take his mask off at the conference and play how to host a murder. So when you now have that for the remainder of the year while at work, he's got a mask on in one way or another. So how does that work? And see, so what I'm suggesting is like aspects like saying to themselves, well, we actually don't have the medical science qualifications to say, like, I mean, how sick as in ill would you feel to be an employer who costs staff more on the topic of sexuality than about the scope and limitations of their duty as a member of a pharmacy team in a store? So if these two co-founders are accosting you and talking about sexuality more than any other topic, then you want to know the source for their information. And if they're going to represent that it's medical science, you want their references, the source for their judgments. You have their definition, but it leaves you spewing when you realize that they've got some affiliation with Hell Riders, and they just think it's cooler and more fashionable how the devil negotiates God. It's actually logically incoherent given the attributes. It's just in the way that you would read an atheism book going, well, you can't have free will unless God lacks all knowledge, because you need to be able to surprise God by your actions. You need to be able to take God by surprise and show God something he didn't expect. But God can't experience those states of being unless God is not infinite in knowledge. So since you're insisting that God is infinite in knowledge, There can be no such thing as a free will violation. There can be no such thing as a free will action. There can be no such thing as a God-assigned test. What happens with Freemasons and the Lucifer thing is that they go, well, what conflicts apply between the believer and the God with all of the infinite powers now applies to Lucifer's accosting of the God with all infinite powers, except what doesn't make sense is how and why God would cave into Luciferian negotiations over and over. Given God's perfections and infinite attributes, why wouldn't God be saying, fuck off, Lucifer? You're less intelligent, less informed, weaker, and less caring than me, so you can't negotiate me. Is what this God would be saying. Instead, you have that Lucifer goes, well, let's ruin Job's life, and they go and kill all his children. In a biblical fairy tale ending, Job gets more children at the end of the story. But yeah, so it's actually I even see it as a homoerotic frizz in the minds of Gary Cairns and Roger Talk, because they're like, we not only can't explain this is like the God Almighty getting renegotiated by a limited in power and means Lucifer. It's like, well, yeah, so the book was written with in the Bronze Age, when human errancy was rampant in mythological text writings. So it's not that there's a grand unifiable truth here. And so while that's what they're not acknowledging, that's what drives them, and it's also what drives them to think they can. With me, it was like, well, if you call me a poof once, do it twice, and I'll make sure that you understand you aren't welcome to survey my place of residence and then tell me about it at work. Do it more than twice, and so on. We're then enemies. But yeah, so Roger's conflict, and it's the exertion of it, is, he considers his business a highly competitive one. His slogans are fascist. I submit to you they're fascist because, and he'll do things like, advertise, at one point advertising the full cost of medications that are subsidized, because he knows that a lot of all the foreign people, all the people that didn't grow up in Canberra, and a great deal of Canberrans are going to wonder, well, when I sign for a subsidized script, does your chemist pay the difference? Because if so, I should become a Capital Chemist customer from now on, because you're paying or for this gap in my medication costs. And a lot of people think that, and while Gary and Roger don't say that actually the Health Insurance Commissioner pay for that gap, they know if they say nothing and keep quieter, a lot of people are going to go off with that random, that the pangs of conscience, saying, well, I should go to Capital Chemist for my every prescription and every pharmacy related inquiry. So they understand that technically, if they don't say it and don't not say it as well, then But I would say, well, then you're too cursory in your assessment of things, while at the same time saying that their homo definition is somehow comes from a medical science degree that they don't have outside of pharmacy, and certainly have not displayed to me yet. Would suggest that they've made a medical scientific judgment or a social scientific judgment. Their religion is a gentleman's club religion that they knew from me. Absolutely, I wouldn't want, without a demonstrated presentation as to why your religion constitutes the truth, the true actual facts of a case, which includes actual, like, proof of the existence of your supernatural beings. I don't care how many gentlemen's cigars or penises you have in your mouths. I just simply would not want to join it. Much less be made to withstand the judgments that spawn from it. And yeah, they would surely show and go, well, here's a social scientific license. We have to show this to you in order to get your consent, as part of the process to obtain your consent to involve you in a social scientific study, because we certainly wouldn't abduct you while you're on the payroll, would we? And that's the point where Gary Cairns, despite having their homo-ness to nut out, like, I mean, they can't explain, well, since you made this judgment without the use of medical science, you therefore made it using religion, but you're prohibiting all these people from joining your religion. So how does that not represent that you will orchestrate abductions by way of doing things like impersonating phone calls and telling the nurse and cops that he or she may not recall making the phone calls because you've impersonated them, that you'd impersonate phone calls while organising for government members to sit around in a classified meeting and you play back phone calls, because statistically the last thing likely to be on everyone's mind in a classified meeting in a closed room of a government building concerning the survey and replay of cassette recordings of phone conversations is that because the meeting was classified, the discernment that the call itself was faked and the product of fraud is unlikely to occur on anyone's minds. This occurs to all of them because it's deception. It's gambled, confident. It's quite confidently gambled deception that they would want to say, yeah, we know as scientists that you're gay because your responsibility comes from the rebellion against your own sexuality, when they're neither able to quantify why or how upon questioning, and will scoff and huff and puff if you ask them why. They know, how do you know this? How do you know this? I require proof before I start contradicting my own drives. And yeah, plus you would think they'd need to put themselves in some place of self-criticism if they're going, well, nor is it right for you to partially recruit a citizen into the ideals of a religion that you're concealing from the populace, while at the same time having the ace in the hole. The ace up your sleeve is simply that this definition comes from a religion that you'll claim is the most superior one in the world because it's based on the idea that all of the world's religions can be unified, which they cannot. It's just representative of an attempt to gain a monopoly on idealism, because you know that's going to make capitalistic goals the easiest to achieve. So yeah, I can see it making them. They want the definition, the religious definition, to go to some good use, some honest good use, and that would be in the moment of conflict against the company at large, for Roger and Gary to feign representation of having taken at odds with one another, in the hopes of driving a wedge into inquiry into complicity between the two of them, and that they would do this when in known places of potential survey. And that is all.